like
Yeah.
6.
Yeah, but we have more than that. So,
I know.
so we have, actually, because we have.
We're live.
We're live. Okay, thank you. Welcome, everybody, back. It's still Wednesday, the 21st of January. And this is, if you're wondering, the General and Housing Committee. What we're doing now is hearing about 602, H602. As I explained this morning, H602 is a bill that's largely about Act 250 and land use planning. And it has been assigned to the Environment Committee. So it's not, we don't have possession of the bill. This is very much what happened with the large housing bill last year, the administration's bill. Although there was a little difference in that for various reasons, I won't go into it, took a very long time to turn it into a bill. And meanwhile, months ahead of that, there was a text which thankfully was shared with us. And we took pieces of that text and put it into a housing bill. And here, similarly, there is material that may be of interest to our Committee on Housing, and some of it may find its way into bills. And in fact, Tom and I, in our bill on rural finance, have already, in a draft, included part of the, what's it called? The Housing Accelerator. It's got some sexy name that I don't know who's responsible for that, but I won't say. So we're going to hear from the author of the bill in the House, Patricia McCoy, who's our august minority leader, and also Alex Farrell. So Patricia, welcome.
Thank you.
I think your first appearance, maybe, in this city this year.
This year, yeah.
Right. So welcome, take it away.
Thank you. For the record, Representative Patty McCoy. I represent Rutland 1, Pulteney, Ira, and share the town of Wells with Representative Pritchard. Thank you for having me in today. As the chair just mentioned, this bill is now in the Environment Committee. And I appreciate your time listening to it because there are sections of this bill that should be within the purview of general and housing. So I'll just begin. I'm going to just tee it up, and then if you don't mind, I'm going to send it over to Commissioner Farrell and head back to my joint transportation committee meeting. Over the past several years, the governor and the legislature have approved hundreds of millions of dollars in housing investments. Yet Vermont still faces a severe housing shortage. It's clear we need to do more out of the investments we're making. Permitting appeals and zoning policies remain far too redundant, costly, and burdensome. To make the most of the historic dollars being invested, we must make it faster, easier, and cheaper to build in order to increase housing supply and bring down costs for Vermonters. That means treating this issue with the urgency it deserves. We can't nibble around the edges, and we absolutely cannot make it even more burdensome for Vermonters to build housing in rural parts of our state, because rural Vermonters deserve affordable housing as well. The governor's omnibus housing bill, which is H602, will increase the pace and equitable distribution of home building while lowering the cost, risk, and burden of development, especially for small scale and new developers. This bill takes important steps. I believe these efforts are supported by the vast majority of Vermonters. I hope we in the legislature take it seriously as well. We have listened to special interest groups for several years. It's time we listen to, support, and begin the work that Vermonters are clamoring for, and work that will make a real difference for Vermonters. Thank you very much for listening to my short little speech, and I will now turn it over to Commissioner Farrell, who will get into the nuts and bolts of the bill. And I really do appreciate you taking this on, even though it's not living in your committee Yeah, and I.
Where you don't get to go.
Yeah.
You don't get to go before I allow people
Okay,
to ask you a question, realizing, of course, that we are going to get a subject matter expert
correct.
in here. Yes,
Thank you so much. And I believe there is also it's more of a comment. I believe there is a companion bill, that, Leader Beck put forward downstairs. Is that accurate as well? And did that, sorry, I didn't look, did that go to their environment committee or did that?
They have
Yes.
a natural resource.
Or sorry, right,
Yeah.
naturally. Okay, so that's over there too.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
and it's
Is it identical?
Is it identical?
Yes, that
Okay.
would be, I mean.
Right.
The
Got it.
verbiage is pretty much the same, yes.
Got it.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay, thanks so much, really.
Anybody else? Wait, we can't let her go. Come on, guys.
They have a transportation.
Well, that's right. I'm
Info.
just trying to make her nail this.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Anybody else? Okay, Patty, thank you very
Thank you
much.
so much.
Thank
I have a burning
Have a great
question.
Is it about the banana?
Are there still melty mints upstairs in
Yes.
transportation? Okay.
And, Jones Donuts are up there this morning.
Oh.
Mary.
They must be stale because they're closed.
Sales.
That's where I have to say on appropriations,
The tree.
well, I was never really a donut fan. I'm sorry, I'm just not. It doesn't do much for me until Jim brought in Jones Donuts, and I could not
Or
believe it.
convert.
They are
I-
so
Would not pay for better advertising.
They're so good.
Yeah, I'm gonna get a kickback. Okay. So our next, we're gonna have Alex Farrell, Commissioner Alex Farrell, Commissioner of the Department of Housing and Community Development. And Alex, you're on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Alex Farrell, Commissioner of the Department of Housing and Community Development. In case anyone needs evidence, this job has aged me. That's a younger thinner me.
I did notice.
We know it's your
All
kid.
right, let's get it there.
We know it's your kid.
Friday.
So you people have had 5 years with me. He's only had 6 months.
Yeah.
What about me?
Too long. All right, I'm gonna walk through in more specifics, H602. Hopefully you'll allow me just a moment to give a little context. So this bill does build upon other bills that have been introduced earlier in the biennium. Also sitting in environment and then on the Senate side, Senate Natural. So those, on this side, H412 is one of those. I'll flag that, components of H412 were incorporated into other bills, passed into law, so we're grateful. There are some elements of that bill which have been brought into here, but there are others that we would still be advocating for, but just to say our focus right now is H602 because there are a couple pieces that I'm really going to focus on here today that we think can move the ball forward in important ways, particularly in aligning our planning. Also, just want to flag that you're going to hear other proposals from partners that the administration has been engaged on. So while they might not be included in H602, they are efforts that we're supporting. There's significant internal work happening right now, largely as a result of some of the analysis dictated by the governor's executive order, requiring that agencies undertake various task forces and permit modernization efforts. So that is happening sort of behind the scenes, but again, the logic all built upon the same elements that we decided to incorporate in H602. And also the last piece that I'll flag here is that there are pieces in H602 that are really teeing up future proposals that we'll come back to you with if we see success in the ways that we think we will as a result of parts of H602. So that's part of a longer term vision, including, as I know some of you have already heard about, some of our vision around offsite construction. Pieces of the bill that I'm not going to get into today are the first, I believe, 9 sections, which have to do with Act 250. And you can see here, a lot of these are just consistent with what the governor's been saying since the original discourse on Act 181. around repealing the road rule, extending the interim exemptions from 2027 expiration to a 2030 expiration so that more communities have time to sort out their maps and their 1B. Want to change tier 1B from an opt-in to an opt-out. That's pretty basic behavioral science that just will encourage more communities to participate. And then tier 1A, we have a couple very specific ways to make it easier to administer tier 1A if a community chooses to undertake tier 1A, and make it easier to become a tier 1A community. Firstly, but with that first bullet point, allowing the RPC to be the contract capacity.
Alex, let me ask you just a basic question and probably reveals my ignorance about Act 250. Why, if we feel, which I think the administration does, that we need more time to consider the maps, et cetera, tier 3 needs more time, more debate. I'm not sure I understand the relationship between that and just extending the exemptions. In other words, wouldn't we need to tell them to do, wouldn't we need to expressly call out delaying certain processes? I mean, I get that if we delay the processes, then we have to extend as much as we delay the processes, but don't we have to actually tell them to do that if we wanted to do that?
The mechanics of 181 are actually poor planning in our view, whereas there's going to be a gap between the time that these interim exemptions expire.
Yeah.
Some at the end of this calendar year and then a few months later, and the time where tier 1B and 1A applications are approved. So you're going to have a period of
Yeah.
time where there isn't an exemption at all.
Right.
So we're going to see likely in 2027 and part of 2028, a slowdown in home building as a result.
But wouldn't you, like, for example, I agree. I'm not saying I endorse it or I don't.
Sure, yeah.
I agree. But don't you logistically, like, let's say you wanted to extend the deadline for the maps, wouldn't you need to extend the deadline for the maps? Not just extend the exemption.
Sure. I don't think at this time, it doesn't sound like there's a need to extend the future land use mapping process. Not tier 3, not road rule. The future land use mapping process sounds like that's running on time, should finish by this calendar year.
And tier 3?
The administration position is that tier 3 should also be repealed.
Oh, okay, all right. So that's why that's not the, got it. Okay. Got it. I just didn't understand the logic of it.
Oh, sure.
But that's, since the road rule and tier 3, if they're gone,
I understand.
then you don't need, okay, got it.
Yeah.
And isn't there, I am nerdy, not like the most nerdy, but sometimes nerdy. And I saw that there's a bill that was introduced yesterday or today, I guess, about tier 3. Looked like a rural caucus
Yeah.
coalition. Is that something that remember how you said you had some coalitions with different sprinklings?
Sure, this isn't something we directly engaged in, but we'd be supportive of the elements of that bill that I'm aware of are delay the implementation of tier 3 and inform property owners who could be impacted.
Right.
We'd be very, very supportive. I think in any case, public engagement, broader public engagement and education before implementation is going to be paramount. As you can see, is incorporated soon in our processes.
Okay,
Thanks.
thanks.
Thank you. I'm not an Act 250 expert or land, well, I know something about certain types of land use, Act 250, I'm not. A bit more context, again, I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on this because you've heard from me on 802 Homes, which is the third phase of Homes for All. Just know that this logic that's being built upon, this is the effort that we're leveraging to expand by right housing. There are two ways to go about by right housing. Well, no, I'm sorry. There are many ways to go about by right housing. You will hear discussions in this building this session about two ways that those are advocated for by right housing. One is through this method where we're really trying to enable builders and small scale developers by giving a clearer path through the municipality to build at a small scale. The other that you'll hear from Let's Build Homes, which we are supportive of, we think these are complementary efforts, is really giving the municipality a tool, which is these overlay districts and model zoning, giving the municipality the tool to enable by right. Both of those things can work together because not every municipality is going to have the capacity to undertake a root zone. Whereas we're trying to create something here that every single municipality can benefit from in Vermont, and builders, specifically builders in every municipality.
I have a question, just.
Oh, yes, please.
Like, can you just, for the sake of those who don't understand, say what by right means?
Sure, it actually can be interpreted in a lot of ways. The idea of by right is that there are regulatory parameters set so that if you meet these very specific parameters, you essentially don't need to get a housing permit. It's an approval from the zoning administrator. And so that can take the form of, in some communities, they take the approach of form-based zoning. So Winooski's had a lot of success with form-based zoning. So developers know if they meet many, very specific criteria, they will just get their building permit, and there is not discretionary review. So it doesn't go before a development review board where there's sort of a negotiation as to what the project will look like. The way it's proposed, as long as it meets the criteria, is the way it's approved. Form-based code is not easy to administer, especially in smaller municipalities. So in a way, you can look at this, our 802 Homes effort, as a way to enable that same form-based code logic, but across the state, so that each municipality doesn't need to go through the logistical effort of creating a form-based code. Did that feel right to everybody? Answer questions? Okay. So we'll dive into the specifics of this by right housing proposal. So the initial phase of 802 Homes is going to be at least 10 construction ready designs, full construction plans. Those will be launching in December of this year after a substantial public input, pilot with 3 communities. The plans themselves will be launched for anyone to use statewide this December. That is happening regardless, as essentially an option for anyone to undertake.
That's done without legislation
Exactly.
and it just under your discretion, right?
Yes.
And when you say pilot in the 3 communities, that pilot is what's done in the pilot that's done by the end of the year?
Sure, good question. What we're asking these communities to do who are participating in the pilot is there's an exchange. What they're giving us is their input and their community members to tell us what they think the designs ought to look like. We're going to go broader than just these communities, but we're trying to use these neighborhoods as sort of test cases. In exchange, they are agreeing to adopt all of these designs as pre-approved. So essentially what I described before, they will be the first 3 communities to just say, we are voluntarily adopting these as pre-approved designs. In Manchester, for example, we've already connected with a builder, a gentleman named Bill Drunzig, who's done a lot of great middle income housing in Manchester. And he wants to do a case study, and he will build a neighborhood entirely from what will be these designs in Manchester. In other communities, say Hartford, we'll do test cases that will be more infill focused. So enabling builders in the area to add a 2 or 3 unit building on a lot where there's already, say, a single family or another building. So that true infill. So
It's Manchester, Hartford, what's the third?
Essex Junction.
Yes.
Essex Junction also tees itself up better for that infill.
It's a what?
As infill housing. So we're trying to give folks the ability to see what this will look like in practice before it rolls out more broadly. So what this proposal does in sections 8, 9, and 10 is it establishes that DHCD has the authority to designate what these 10 designs are. It does not restrict us to 10 designs. We can add designs. The requirement that's in here is that DHCD, if we add a design after this initial public input phase, we must hold public comment period, and we must hold public hearing. We would envision that anytime we were to add a design, we would envision that likely being a 6 to 12 month process, because we want to hear from builders, community members, potential residents, and municipalities. That, I think, really covers the concept. I do have the bill up if folks want to look at specific language, or I can just take questions about the concept and how it would work in practice.
Questions from the committee? So I guess I have a series of questions.
Okay,
So there's a design, let's say a duplex. What happens in a community that isn't one of these three communities?
so without,
I'm a bit, you know, I have a field, and the field is zoned residential of some sort, rural God, I mean, there are so many different zoning designations, and I decide I like this. I don't automatically get to skip my design review board, right?
you,
I'm not in Manchester, I'm not in Hartford, and I'm not in Essex.
and in the scenario, you're saying without this legislation.
No, what's this legislation contemplate?
That's right. So this legislation contemplates essentially making what's happening in those three pilot communities, making that effective across the state. So those three pilot communities are no longer the only ones doing that as of July 1, 2027, if this is enacted. And so take any community, you still need to, it still needs to be zoned residential, it still needs to be zoned to the unit count that you're seeking. So in your duplex example, essentially anywhere that it's zoned for single family or duplex. However, you still need to comply, and you'll see in the language, as with anything that's in this sort of exempt from municipal zoning list, you still need to comply with things like setbacks and other municipal regulations that have to do with the site. So it would really be that there's no discretionary review by the development review board of these designs. I'll say in many municipalities, this initial phase of 10 designs that are 4 units and less don't go through that discretionary review anyway. So there will be many communities for which this is not much of a change, except that now builders have an open source design to work from, so they can skip a lot of steps, cost.
Yes, Elizabeth.
How many of the 10 building ready designs include universal design?
I don't know how many now because we don't have the designs yet. I'll point to the toolkit where that is an intentional component of these. So let me use an example that I've shared with you all before. I want to see if it's included here because I know, okay, I'm sorry that I'm just going to have to point to one of these because I don't have plans. But this right here is an example that I've shared with you all before. This is a 3-unit building. You may walk by this, by the way, and think it's a single family home. It's a 3-unit building. And these 2 units are 2-floor units. So it's difficult to make those fully accessible. The unit in the back is single floor, universal design, and it would have a rear ramp entrance. So the goal here is that we can still comply with vernacular and the character of these neighborhoods where it's, you know, this would say fit into a neighborhood where most things are 2 stories rather than some of the designs which could typically be. But allowing there to be, say, in this case, the unit that's around back that would be fully accessible. Other examples where we've been able to accommodate that is, say, a 3-story that's stacked. So the first unit you can easily make accessible, whereas maybe the upper 2 might not be. So not every unit in all of the designs will be universal design or will be fully accessible. We're trying to make it so that that can be accommodated in these infill sites.
So just to be clear, do you have any internal rules or requirements about what percentage of your designs must include universal design versus accessible or visitable or whatever, but at the very basic universal design?
Sure, we didn't go through any rulemaking, so there's no rule related to it. It is absolutely going to be part of the process. So the toolkit's a good example of how we chose to prioritize that, largely in partnership with some of our partners who helped us understand how to make that work. We've also made it clear, I need to go back and look at the RFP. We've made it clear to the vendor that that is a priority for us.
The vendor of
The vendor who's creating the
The
designs.
architect.
So it's
the
usually,
architect. I just want to note for the committee, there's just an interesting legal aspect to this. We have a lot of situations where people come to us, and if anything's going to happen, it requires a change in the law. So it has to come to the legislature. But there are all kinds of other ways of making things happen that don't require changes in the law. For example, sometimes there's changes in just administrative regulations. So for example, in the landlord tenant bill that I'm putting forward, there's something to do with the funding a program that's existing that helps with back rent. And I was thinking that maybe I would put, people are talking about making it more accessible to more people. But I discovered that the law that created it is one sentence long. And that the law, it was not created by us. The real fleshing it out came at the Department, the Vermont Department Housing and Agency,
I think it might be the SHA.
VSHA.
Vermont State Housing Authority.
Vermont State, I always have trouble with these initials. Vermont State Housing, I know it starts with a V, right? Anyway, so that didn't have any law. It was just all done by them. And so it's being renegotiated between them and other people. Then there are programs that don't require either a regulation or a law. And this is one so far. In other words, everything they've done, that book, everything they've done, they did because they have they've done under their general authority. They've moved it this far. They made agreements with 3 communities. Those agreements didn't come to us, and they don't have to come to us. They made agreements with 3 agencies that were voluntary. The agencies the towns voluntarily undertook all of this and are working on it. And those agencies will have to change their rules to make it so that once these 10 designs are approved, they're as of right. They don't, all you do is you come in and you get a building permit. You don't have to go to the design review board and get a permit. What's happened is they've carried it as far as they can carry it without now a change in the law. And so they've always been very forthright with us and come and given us preview of their designs and showed us their design book and given us multiple copies, which are sitting in here of their design book. But now is the time where they're coming to the legislature because they need authority. In other words, if they're going to extend it statewide. And I would only ask, could you give more detail? Is it all communities and all towns in the state, no matter what Act 250 zone there, Act 181 zone they're in, et cetera? You want to describe the breadth of this?
Right, it really defers to the municipality's residential zoning. And so the only constraints on it would be whether the municipality has zoned something to say 2, 3, or 4 units in this case. So something, if a district is zoned single family and duplex, the 3 and 4 units would not be mandated. So there's not forced up zoning here. It still does defer to the municipal zoning district.
And its location.
That's right.
And if it's residential under the Home Act, it has to allow duplex, right?
That's right. And this 1 to 4 unit was intentional for a number of reasons. And I won't go into all the reasons that it's simplest possible scale for new developers to undertake this, but financing 4 units and less is much more straightforward. Insurance, you can get personal lines insurance for 4 units and less rather than commercial insurance. And the Home Act made in many cases 4 units and less much more straightforward. And so municipalities have already adapted most of their regulations to accommodate that.
But it applies statewide to every one of the towns to the extent that they have residential zoning.
That's right.
And if they have no zoning,
That hasn't been contemplated. Let me come back to my general counsel. I'm
we're
sure-
told by certain experts who've appeared before us that there are 90 towns that don't have zoning. You want to identify 100 and that's you want to identify yourself, please?
Samantha Sheehan from the Vermont League of Cities and Towns. And my understanding for your question, Mr. Chair, is if there's no zoning, no municipal permit is required. So this intended project that's an 802 home may or may not be subject to Act 250 jurisdiction.
Right.
But these can be built now in 109 municipalities without a permit.
There would be nothing to trigger it.
Mhm.
Unless you build 10 or more units and to trigger Act 250 or
Or the road roll,
or
Right,
July
okay,
1.
right. Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt you. So it applies statewide.
Sorry.
And the only caveat is for some towns, it doesn't matter because no permit would be required anyway.
Which would be the case today.
Yeah, anyway. And so okay. Any questions so far? This is our chance, guys. Shoot. All right.
Keep going.
You know, you might want to, I guess one other thing, comment. I know Tom raised this issue and we're undertaking we're going to be looking at manufactured homes. And we're going to be looking at prefabricated, offsite prefabricated homes. Does this interface with them at all?
It doesn't need to, but I'm glad you mentioned that because I just to harken back to something that you heard me say when I was talking about 802 homes a couple of weeks ago. At least these initial 10 construction ready designs and plans, each one will actually have two sets of plans. One for traditional site built, stick built homes. The other would be offsite plans so that they could be created as modular. But that reminds me of one other thing, and I'll bring, I'll bring it up on my screen because I do want to talk a little bit about the mechanics of essentially the list that we're adding to say that these may not be further regulated municipal level. And I'm going to veer off of that point for just a moment to make a broader point about construction types. Okay. So.
Got to make it bigger. We can't,
That's fair. Okay, let me,
but get to where you want and then.
okay, how does this look?
Yep.
Okay, so this, in Title 24 right now, this is essentially a list of things that local zoning may not restrict. Now, again, to the comments I made before, the municipality may still restrict things like location, size, height, but you may not enact zoning that would prevent these specific functional uses. So this is a list that already exists, and an aspect of our proposed legislation is to add to this list.
That's section what? 44,
13, I believe.
13. Yeah.
Right, yeah, 4413. And so an aspect of this is to add, you can see some of the recent additions over the last couple of years. These were robust conversations. There's a lot of trade-offs when we decide to add something to this list. And so that's something that we're very cautious about. But you can see emergency shelters and hotels and motels to be converted permanently for affordable housing developments. These are things that were added with the intention of trying to make better use of some of our spaces and also meeting this emergency moment we've been in the last few years. And so functionally, this would be adding to this list a new category, which is specifically DHCD, DHCD's new list, new catalog. So it's giving a new authority to DHCD to specify designs that will be included, be protected by this list now. There has been a contemplation of adding to this list construction type, so that basically a municipality may not restrict homes based on construction type. So you may not restrict based on something being a manufactured home or offsite construction such as modular or panelized. There's been some pushback. I'm not gonna advocate in any direction in this moment. What I'm gonna say is that's something that you all may want to contemplate down the line after you look at offsite construction. And again, I'll flag the distinction between the definition of manufactured home, which is what we think of mobile home parks, and then other offsite construction such as modular and panelized. So
You should know, now, it's important just for your information, because we haven't sent you, the bills haven't been actually introduced,
okay,
but Gail and others are introducing the mobile home bill. It has in it a section
okay,
that I believe does that with respect to manufactured homes. Sorry, I
okay.
didn't say the M word right, manufactured home. And, but I don't think there's anything that in a bill that I know of that does it for offsite modular.
Yep, agreed.
Although it sounds like indirectly, if an offsite modular line was added to follow one of your 10 offsite plans, that would be included, right?
That's right.
So some offsite modular.
And I don't even know of a municipality that by district restricts modular right now. I'm only flagging it as consideration.
Right.
But I have been hearing about this bill for a while, and so I'm very excited to see it.
And also, there's a bill that's being introduced that Tom, Charlton, myself, and Ashley and others are on that looks at rural finance, and in there is, with the treasurer's assistance, and aggregation of ways to aggregate orders of offsite modular housing. And what strikes me is the compatibility between that and what you're proposing, in that it would facilitate going to a manufacturer of offsite housing and taking one of your designs and asking for 40 of them.
That's right. It would also, as I understand, as I've seen the language, it also facilitate, say, very small towns, essentially pooling resources to place a bulk order. So a municipality could only guarantee, or a developer in a municipality rather, could only guarantee placement of 2, but a collection of municipalities might be able to place an order for 20. They could, as I understand it, place a bulk order as a group. So something we're very supportive of, in large part because it is a logical continuation of something that we've been working on parallel. So they do really go hand in hand. Thank you.
Oh, wait, you've got a question.
Yeah,
Sounds
I just want to say it out loud, just make sure that I'm following. So the 10 models, 2 different design venue options that people will have options to look over. There's going to be a pilot in 3 areas, Manchester, Hartford, Essex. And then on July 1st, if enacted, other areas, if they meet the requirements, will be able to mimic and use the same model with similar zoning if they're within one of those 109 areas. Is that accurate?
So let's set the 109 aside for now, because
Okay.
essentially the 109 number refers to municipalities with no zoning, so everything's by right. I'm being a little cheeky when I say that, but that's basically true.
So that means including outside of that area.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
okay.
But so now let me just, a point of clarification to Chair Mahali's point earlier. There are 2 things happening. One that will happen no matter what, which is that once these designs become public,
Yeah.
any municipality anywhere can opt to adopt these as pre-approved. So that can happen regardless of whether this is enacted into law. The only
Once
thing,
the designs are made public?
that's right.
Oh,
Because there's nothing, let's say I come from Calais.
yeah.
I do. There's nothing that stops Calais
That's right.
from looking at that book and just deciding to put in their code that those are as of right.
And when we,
But it's not required. Because the law they're proposing would mean that regardless of whether Calais changed its code or not, effectively what would happen is everywhere there's residential zoning, those 10 are in, man. Okay.
As of July 1, 2027. So we want to give sufficient time for those to.
What if there are complications with the plan, once like the plans are not out yet? So how, like, who reviews the plans to make sure like that they are effective and, like, how does that happen?
Yeah, so I'd say authority to vet and create plans as it's drafted here rests with the Department of Housing and Community Development with coordination from basically upfront coordination with Division of Fire Safety in the state of Vermont so that their approval is included in our designs right up front. However, the legislation requires we cannot add something to that list unless we have a public comment period and hold a public hearing. So that's when all stakeholders and municipalities are probably the folks that we would go to first because their input is really paramount. And I'm not just saying that because I can see the LCT out of the corner of my eye here. That's really the opportunity for them to share their feedback.
So I'm just like, if in theory, if like the designs were put out and then they were built. And it was like, oh, well, in actuality, something was different.
Oh, sure.
Like, it's like, let's say something didn't go according to,
I
like,
see.
it didn't play out in reality based off of the plans. What is that, like, and how does that get mitigated?
This is a great question and something I would love for this committee to contemplate. And what I think I hear you asking is there some sort of a de minimis variance allowance within these plans? Something that Chair Mahali has referenced before. I think that would be a great change. I need to ask general counsel to what extent that is already, our general counsel drafted this. So I need to ask him to what extent that's already contemplated in the language. But I think that's a really great point that an explicit, maybe some explicit authority to DHCD that there is some de minimis allowance variance from these plans. I think that makes great sense. Thank you.
Other questions? Yes, please, did you have one, Elizabeth?
I do, but it's about section 11.
Okay.
It's about what?
Section 11, which we're not there.
Okay, all right, go ahead then. And we'll come back to Tom. Did you have a question?
Just to know, that might be a question. Active in the 10-acre towns, there's 109 that don't have the zoning. They do. Active 50 triggers at a much lower threshold in those towns. So the size of the number, the number of units being put up might trigger that anyways. I don't know if that's something that would.
That's not
Want to face that.
more than 9 units, right?
Yeah, I believe in a
Number.
10-acre town, it'd be 6.
Well, it would be 9 or 1.
Okay, so, this is, I guess you could say this is agnostic to this, depending on the type of development that's happening, whether it's a neighborhood, you're building or a single infill site, before you fly under it, no matter what. But there are always other triggers. For example, it could trigger a wetlands, right? So there's other state permitting that wouldn't necessarily be by right as part of anything contemplating the way this is drafted.
So, yeah, so
It's an expansion of.
yeah. So in any case, if someone has a lot
Right,
that isn't very big, that's zoned residential, then if this bill became law, regardless of what town they were in, that if it had zoning, someone could come in and build a house that's one of these 10 designs, whether it was prefab, offsite or not, stick built, and all they'd need is a building permit. And that, but if on the other hand, it's a land that's, let's say, they want to subdivide into 5 lots or something, they would still have to comply with not only the town subdivision ordinance, but also wetlands, all the state permits, et cetera, right?
that's right.
We haven't dealt yet with the state permitting issue.
That's right.
But is it fair to say that is the subject of the ongoing process contemplated in the governor's EO for continuous meetings at the secretarial level?
That's right, that's right.
And those are happening?
They are through two parallel efforts. One that's continuous regardless of any specific effort, and then another sort of cabinet-led effort with staff from many agencies, a multidisciplinary team to living permit modernization. Those are happening in parallel, and that was more of a sprint. An initial report was shared with the governor's office December 1. Some of the contents of that report have been shared with House Environment Committee. And it may benefit this committee to hear pieces of that, to hear how the administration is thinking about the future of permitting at the state to make it more accommodating of the applicant, not state processes.
That is interesting. I mean, everything in this committee involves other committees.
Yeah.
But it would seem to me that we'll talk about it, but we may want to hear about that. I actually personally consider that to be the most important part of the EO. I know it's not the controversial part, and this is often the case, because I consider I consider the state permitting process to be one that really could be susceptible to major change, and that it's going to take a lot of thinking. And is that process, are those meetings ongoing every week, every 2 weeks? How serious is that process?
That process, I believe now it's only weekly now that the report's been submitted, but for a period, it was many folks from many agencies meeting several times a week. It was a significant undertaking to get that initial study and report completed, but it built upon work that had been done really since 2017, with some updating since we learned a lot since then. But it's impressive what they were able to do in just a couple of months. Okay, great. I think it would be great for this committee to hear from those folks.
It's not a written report that's been made public, right?
I don't believe the report itself has been made
Yeah,
public.
okay.
Good to go.
You're going ahead.
All right, section 11. So this is where we are seeking to build on the good work of this committee and Representative Krasnow to incorporate housing targets, not just the targets themselves, but also the measuring and reporting on those targets in the Home Act and Act 181. While our initial report might ask for some small language changes, it is not because we don't like it. We've actually found tremendous value, not only in the exercise of measuring our progress, but figuring out where to get data has opened a lot of new doors for us, because it's enabled us to work with other agencies who have data that has benefited us. You all also passed a law or passed some language last year that we had asked for to allow us to work with tax department to use CAMA data, which is grand list data for municipalities. Again, data that always existed, it's already there. The municipality is already doing the work. This allowed tax to just tap into that data so that can feed into our housing dashboard. So the point of me teeing all this up is that we now have a tremendous amount of data. We've used that data to set targets, and at a statewide level, we're planning to those targets. At a regional level, we're now planning to those targets, specifically in the future land use mapping. Act 181 dictated that regional plans must accommodate a substantial majority of their housing targets as a result of that process in the essentially 4 future land use areas where growth is encouraged. And the shorthand is the tier 1A and 1B areas, but not solely those, because you could opt out of tier 1B and still have those future land use areas. So it's now at the state and regional level. Section 11 of this bill seeks to now bring that alignment all the way through to the municipal level and require that this be included in municipal plans. A lot of municipalities are already doing this.
Ours is.
That's right. And the time, for a lot of municipalities, it just worked out that the timing was such that they had the targets, they were doing the future land use mapping process, so they're able to in updated municipal plan, it was able to just be incorporated. What we've done here is we want to basically give the municipality the opportunity to tell us that, yes, there are regulations in their plan already can accommodate the housing targets. To be clear, a municipality can't dictate that homes be built. They can foster an environment and enable enough homes to be built with enough area and sufficient zoning. If, however, they find that the target they've been given, they can't accommodate, then they're given the opportunity here to identify the constraints.
Right.
This mirrors largely in the logic of the language that you all laid out for the Department of Housing and Community Development. If we are finding that the state is not meeting its housing targets, you all have asked that we demonstrate why, identify the constraints, and propose remedies. That's essentially what we've done here for the municipality. So the municipality may say, tier 3 has substantially affected our ability to build because we're a small town and it just happens so that we won't be able to accommodate the housing targets because of tier 3. That would check the box of this section. So now essentially this is providing regional planning commissions and the state with more information about what our constraints are. We suspect a lot of municipalities will tell us that there are infrastructure constraints and that we as a state essentially need to step up and support them in making investments that they want to make to enable more housing, but they don't have the ability right now. That's just a suspicion we have because we do have a good working relationship with a lot of communities and we hear that quite often, thus CHIP last year, the Money Bond Bank. So this is not just an opportunity to align statewide, regional, and local. It's about information. It's about us understanding what's preventing Vermont from achieving the things that we all agree we want to achieve.
I know we have, well, Elizabeth and you, so let's go. Elizabeth, you had a question on.
I do.
Okay.
What if they don't? Where is the accountability?
There's no penalty built into this. This is really about information. Municipalities be able to outline what their constraints are.
So will the municipality or will the municipalities understand that that's the actual goal?
Will they understand?
I mean, will that be communicated through the RPCs or?
I see.
Will they receive information from the RPCs that say, that says, this is a requirement? Or will they receive information, from the RPCs that says, this is our goal? And these are the secondary and tertiary goals?
I think that's a really good question. And I hear you asking a bit about process, but also about education. So from the department's lens, we would likely undertake some sort of an educational campaign, but likely in our grant agreements with the RPCs, we would include that they educate the municipalities about this new requirement in the municipal plan.
Would
Whether
you just say through our grant agreements?
Mhm.
Is that what you said?
That's right, that's right.
Can you explain that a little bit?
Oh, sure, I'm sorry. The Department of Housing and Community Development annually has grant agreements with the regional planning commissions. We provide funding and we oversee their a good portion of their activities. They're funded through the property transfer tax.
Mhm.
So that flows through our department. They're large part sub-grantees of the Department of Housing and Community Development. So we're given an opportunity to give input into their work plans every year.
Okay. Yes, I have a number of questions from that, but I can ask you
Okay.
offline. about that.
Okay.
So, but then going back to, so through those grants, they have to adhere to the requirements of the grant in order to receive the,
Let me step back.
okay, thank you.
We work with the regional planning commissions. The function of that generally is our grants to the regional planning commissions. This is a separate component, which is a new, essentially a new component of a municipal plan.
Yeah.
The regional planning commissions are largely the technical assistance, which assist in how state statute. So the mention of the regional planning commissions is just that they, for many communities, they comply with this. You can see that there's a lot of, I'm not distracted at all.
Sorry, it's like.
For many municipalities, the regional planning commission is the technical assistance to ensure that they are compliant, that their municipal plan is compliant. And so with this, they would likely be advising many municipalities as to how to make sure that they comply with this new component. There's a lot of, I'll say, release valves in this legislation that makes it, I'm going to say, fairly easy to comply with this. Because a municipality could, for example, simply say, we don't have zoning, however, we've identified that wetlands and state permitting constrain us. I'm thinking of Albert, I grew up in Albert. Wetlands and state permitting will constrain us from meeting our targets. So Albert's targets will be very low.
Okay, and just so that I have my mind straight on these relationships. But the municipal planning commissions also make up the regional planning commission part, right? They're commissioners.
A municipal plan is developed by a municipality. And a regional planning commission, as part of their regional planning process, they will look back at the municipal plan. If I go any further into this, you're gonna have to start asking the LCT or VAPTA questions, because this is the extent of my knowledge. I'll say, one of the divisions in our department does collect municipal plans so that we have updated information on, say, municipality has zoning, things like that. It's really just keeping a catalog of municipal plans. We don't go any further in terms of regulating them or dictating what's in the municipal plan. We keep essentially a catalog.
So you just keep you keep track of the plans, but you don't analyze the plans and how they relate to each other, right? Or do you?
We don't have that charge. Regional planning commissions to some extent do, in that regional planning commissions will seek to make sure that municipal plans jive with and flow into the regional plan. And Act 181 really sought to reinforce all of this by aligning planning all the way through from municipal to the state level, which is why, for example, the future land use mapping process, which is a component of the new of regional planning. It was largely, at least supposed to be, led by municipalities. The municipality had a lot of input into what their map would look like in what was submitted to the land use review board. The land use review board is now the ultimate authority in approving these components of the regional plan, land use components of the regional plans.
Okay, thank you.
I have something to say. I love it. Put a pin in it. Let's pass it. Even if we don't get the other bill, I think this is very important. I watch my own city council meetings and we had our plan and whatnot, but I really think this is I think this is a good way to go deeper and granular to really get the tight data, and I think that we should put some sort of talk in it to put it on something I think there are some really good pieces in your presentation and that we should be trying to figure out how to incorporate into the work that we're doing if we don't end up getting the entire bill. But I like this a lot. And everywhere I go, people always are excited about that dashboard, and it's great. And one of the original concepts was to have a private right of action if the places couldn't keep up with their housing goals, but
Somebody vetoed that.
yeah, we didn't do that. But anyway, I like it. And yeah, I mean, I think it comes with education too, though. So in South Burlington, we happen to have an extensive, group of folks who come and make presentations. But I think the Regional Planning Commission folks can inform the municipalities about these pretty well. So I like it and I wanna snag it.
If I might ask a couple questions. I also like the concept. I'm trying to wrap my head around how we would do it in much of Vermont.
Sorry.
Um, Is there any appropriation in this bill?
Well, I'm sorry.
Mhm.
There are appropriations in this bill, sections 12 through 16, but they're not consistent with the administration's budget. So they were put in as placeholders, not meant to indicate what the administration is advocating for in terms of appropriations. There's not an appropriation to enable this component.
Okay. And correct me if I'm wrong, but in many towns, it would seem to me that this would be an effort of some substantial technicality. A town plan or zone has certain areas designated that permit residential, but nobody's ever tried to estimate how much residential could be built on those sites. No one has ever gone into a site and said, oh, this is 10 acres and it could accommodate this many houses. So someone would have to do, with a planning background, would have to go in, because there's no requirement in, for example, just to pick a state, in California, the general plan of any town for the last 30 years, there's been a requirement that it estimate all of that. What it's, how much housing it can accommodate, given its zoning, and how that meshes with the regional body's allocation of growth to their town, et cetera. But here, that requirement doesn't exist in law at the moment. So all of that calculation by, I presume, a planning professional would be new. And most towns that I'm familiar with outside of Chittenden County don't have planning professionals if they're small. So who pays for all of that?
The regional planning, sorry, I'm starting with the word regional planning commission,
Yeah.
not to answer the question who pays for that. I'm
Okay,
gonna answer the question around. The regional planning commission's already had to do this exact calculation as part of the future land use mapping process for each.
they've calculated how much each town can accommodate.
And there had to be some methodology, for exactly the type of calculation you're talking about, how many homes could be accommodated by what we're planning in X community. That was required as part of their future land use mapping process. And so there is information that could be the basis for communities that say, just don't have any staff, which is probably the majority of our municipalities. And so I'd say that would be a starting point. As far as any community that wanted to take it further beyond what the regional planning commission can already supply them with, we do have a municipal planning grant program. I'll say that it is oversubscribed most years, so I don't want to give the indication that everyone who applies for municipal planning grant would get one. We're able to fund almost all communities, but not every single community.
So towns, so for example, my town of Callis would talk to its regional planning commission, look at its capacity from that. So that means that the regional planning commission, I guess what I'm saying, started with a top-down approach, right? They were given for their region, you guys disaggregated the overall state housing need. You disaggregated that into counties, regions that match the RPCs. You gave that number to the RPC. Their obligation was to sprinkle that out to the town. And they did that somehow. And you're saying that in doing that, they are aware of the actual capacity of the town?
That was-
Not its obligation, its capacity.
That's right.
Then why do you ask the towns to do this when it's already been done?
Essentially, so I'm going to clarify a piece of that. There were two components.
Yeah.
Setting the housing targets and then looking at geography to establish that a substantial majority of those units could be accommodated within regions drawn in the future land use mapping. So that means they had to go through that second process, which is an evaluation of how many units could fit within an area, not just the first part, which is establishing essentially this allocation targets. And so while that's just a substantial majority of the units, not that somewhere in the municipality all could be accommodated, they did that calculation. So somewhere there's at least a basis. I'm gonna
So,
share-
so in other words, for Callis, I'm just gonna invent numbers. Let's say Callis, I really don't know what they are, which probably says something. But let's say that their obligation is 500 units. Somewhere in the bowels of my regional planning commission, there is a knowledge set that knows that although my obligation is 500, all I can do is accommodate is 250. They know that.
There's some there was some calculation, some methodology that went into making that
So
calculation.
if they know that, why are you imposing on the towns the obligation to reveal it when the RPCs already have?
It's a different question. The RPC were asked as part of the future land use mapping process to accommodate a substantial majority. This looks at all municipal regulations and says, do your regulations accommodate your housing targets? So not just your future land use areas, it goes beyond this, because there will be residential zone areas that aren't in those first four future land use areas. And we need to ensure that housing can be accommodated everywhere, even outside of, say.
But if it is outside, then does the RPC know what it can accommodate?
It would have to, right? Because it had to have the full number in order to know what a substantial majority would be. So I'll share, this is going back to sort of the first half, right? The setting of the targets, not the assessment. And I will apologize for using Chittenden County as the example because I realize we only have one Chittenden County.
No, two now.
No, three?
Three?
Yeah.
Oh, my
Three
goodness.
Chittenden County people here.
Used to
But-
be-
There's other reasons to apologize for that.
But they just very cleanly have the methodology
saw
spelled
that.
out, so it's easier for me to display. So in Chittenden County, they took into account what the rural nature versus the urban suburban mix of a community in distributing their housing targets, and so that's why, Heinsberg has historically produced an average growth between 2000 and 2023 of 16 units. And then their middle range of their 25-year target is 26. So it's still an increase, but it's taking into account what have they done and what could they do based on their makeup. The second part of that then was the future land use mapping, which I don't have their future land use map in front of me right now, but that did have to do that. But I want to come back to something I said earlier. This isn't intended to be punitive to make municipalities go through this process. That's why there's several release valves in here. This is about, we want municipalities to understand that the state is looking at these housing targets and we want them to actually just incorporate them in their zoning. So this component of the municipal plan is not, I think, the be all end all. The fact that we have them reporting on it in the municipal plan isn't the most important part. The most important part is that they're now going to recognize that the state is looking at these housing targets. And in an ideal world, the municipality might actually change their zoning because they look at this and say, we do need to upzone or make some modification or rezone a certain district in order to accommodate our housing targets. That is an ideal outcome. Another ideal outcome is the municipality says, we've done everything we can. This is a constraint that we have. They are very welcome to say, we don't
Infrastructure.
have a specific calculation for what the number of units are that we're missing out on, but we can tell you this is the constraint.
Yeah, I just wanted to just comment, I guess. It seems like you're creating a more clear off-ramp towns, which I like because one of the biggest concerns of where I represent was these housing targets are the future club for what? Because we have already through our RPCs, we have, you guys do your town plan, we'll help you along with it. And sorry, yeah, we really don't like that. So you're not available for these grants anymore.
Mhm.
So it doesn't really feel bottom up at that point. So just another clear off ramp to be like, hey, yeah, I know we have water and sewer, but our sewer's in New Hampshire. We plumb it over there. And our water just had a fuel truck spill next to the wellhead. So we've been trucking water for 5 months.
Yeah.
So I know on your map, we have sewer and water.
Right.
Do we really?
So that's interesting. So one of the things you might get is a map for if we ever have the money, what we would do to enable the growth through more infrastructure.
That's an important point, as well as, Rep. Parsons made the point that a map somewhere might show that there is a public system. Those maps are not, A&R would be the first to tell you, we do not have reliable maps of where water and wastewater systems are, or their capacity. So improving our understanding of that benefits all of our planning across the board. I'll maybe build on one other point that I heard in there, which is that I have heard folks have floated the idea of using these to be punitive towards municipalities that don't meet these targets. The reason this is structured the way it is I don't like that route simply because it could be placing blame on a municipality that doesn't actually have the tools or the ability to meet these housing targets. I want to provide municipalities the chance to either make a change to accommodate them or say we can't.
Elizabeth,
Thank you. Just,
did you have a question? No?
in case I missed it, is there an interplay between or among regional planning commissions? Do you all get into I know you have your future land use targets. I know there's RPC interaction with you. Is there an interaction among RPCs about, oh, wow, so I just looked at your thing and it said that one of the towns has the same number of housing as my town, just as an example, and its goal is 26. And our town's goal is 500. So are there RPCs saying to each other, oh, wow, maybe we are out of scale, or, oh, that's what you're doing. In either direction, like that seems really high, or that seems really low. What's your, do they all go out to lunch, or do they,
Yeah,
like,
that's a great question.
what's the interface between?
Yeah, the RPCs, and I'll start my answer by saying, I think it'd be great for you all to hear from VAPTA, which is the Association of the Regional Planning Commissions, because they can tell you a lot about their process, especially over the last 18 months or so through Act 181, but they did develop joint methodologies so that at least components of the regional plan and the way they go about administering the regional plan would all have commonalities in the same underlying methodology. So they very much took that into account. What level of granularity they went into, I don't know. I encourage you to ask the folks from VAPTA. They do coordinate very closely.
Are there other questions?
Last
Before we
round.
go, go ahead.
So I just curious, because this is an environment and energy, so it's not our bill. What are their feelings on this? Is this something that they're gonna take up? Like, or do you have any ideas on what those conversations look like?
It's unclear whether they'll take it up. Last year's bill and in previous years, we weren't invited to share in that committee.
Okay.
You were not invited
I
to
didn't
test
testify.
because they didn't take it off the wall.
That's right.
Yes,
So you were here last week or the week before, and I asked you if the administration would support VHIP being moved to oh my gosh, base funding. Thank you, dear Lord. And you said you were not at liberty to share at that time, but for the record, can you now share what the administration feels about VHIP?
Thank you, Vice Chair Bartley. Yes, the administration.
talk about a softball.
Would very much like to see VHIP in base. I'd encourage this committee. I know you all are experts in VHIP. You know VHIP very well. Your colleagues down in Probst have some information, but maybe not all the information. So they'll probably be inviting our team in more. But I'd encourage you all to hear from Sean Gilpin and his team, and the entire housing division of Vermont could fit on that bench right there. And a good portion of them will likely be lost if VHIP is not put into base. And I'm not trying to say that a program of state government should be made permanent simply to stabilize staffing in the housing division. But I am making a broader point about VHIP. We have 1,200 covenants out there for VHIP units that need to be administered one way or another. And that staff is who does that right now. And without permanent funding, that staff goes away. That's substantial detriment.
For your information, I want to, I have a couple of questions or pieces of information to exchange with the witness. But before I do, are there other final questions of this witness on the subjects he's been talking about? First of all, just so you know, there's this desire in the committee actually to explore more about the current status of VHIP. And we will be trying to arrange that with you. Where exactly the staff you're talking about will want to come in. I think there's an interest in what's changed, what do the regulations look like, what are there specific questions about what they require, the budget, the VHIP issues will be there. I do have one other question, but I'll ask it of the representative of VLCT. I am assuming it's correct that VLCT will develop or has developed a position on the administration on this bill, 602.
Yeah, we have expressed positions on components of it.
Right. And the land use, do those include the land use?
And the land use.
The housing components that we've been discussing.
Yeah, like for example, for 2 years, we've supported base funding for VHIP.
Right. But I mean, on this whole section 11 and those others, you'll have a position. Is that position, but I assume if it's not taken off the wall in the environment, there's no place for you to express the position. Or will you just put it out there?
Oh, we're expressing. I'm expressing it at 1:30 and having house agriculture.
Oh,
Yeah,
you are?
yeah,
Okay.
we have serious concerns with activity one implementation that are well aligned with the administration.
No, but this
Yeah.
bill, section 11, that's
Section 11,
required.
the municipal plans,
Yeah.
we do not oppose the language suggested by the administration. It's achievable. And I guess, not to testify on the fly, but we share the suspicion that the common constraint will be infrastructure. Another common constraint will be conservation, existing conservation easement. And then the other will be state regulatory regimes, primarily Act 250 and the road book.
Okay,
So with that critical second half of section 11, or demonstrate why we can support it.
yes.
I have to say, I think a lot of the work that we do here, a lot of it is founded in statistics and data. But the other part is those of us who are in the building, we're here because this is what we do every day. And I think that a lot of our policies affect all Vermonters, and they don't have the ability to come in and testify. And by moving forward with this and understanding why we're taking out assumptions, and we're able to move forward with municipalities to really figure out what their pain points are and, start to gravitate towards solutions that are really dedicated to those specific issues. It's not just throwing spaghetti at the wall or throwing money at a problem. It's specific policy decisions that we can make from this type of data. So I'm really excited to have this conversation.
Thank you. Any other questions before we break? We're due back at 1 o'clock where we will be hearing about the impacts on of what's going on in the federal scene on labor. Thank you, Commissioner. It was a pleasure as always. I'm sure we will see you again.
Yes.